All right, well, we will officially call the meeting to order. And the first order of business is appointment of a police officer into the Irvington Police Department. If you want to promote Omar.
Yep, everyone's kind of filtering in here, so just give me a second with that.
Sure.
Okay, here we go. Okay. Hi, Chief.
Hi, how's it going?
Good evening, Chief.
Good evening.
Omar, you're on. You're muted, and there you go. And get it waiting for the video. I think. There you go.
Is.
Hello.
Hey, Omar, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Hello.
Well, thanks for joining us tonight. Congratulations and welcome. It seems I feel like your process was actually we were able to get through pretty quickly. So thanks to the chief, thanks to you, thanks to Westchester County, I guess, for getting everything straightened out. And we're excited to have you on board. So what we'll do first is do the official resolution, and then we'll do the swearing in. Again, the swearing in's on Zoom. Don't feel quite right, but it's the best we can do. So we're excited to have you here. Anyway, I will start with the resolution. Resolve to appoint Omar Oviedo to the position of police officer grade 4 at an annual salary of $71,389 effective May 18th, 2021, subject to completion of a probationary period of not less than 12 weeks and not more than 52 weeks. I will make the motion if I can have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Well, now it's official, Omar, but we'll do the ceremonial swearing in. If you want to raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Omar Oviedo,
I, Omar Oviedo,
do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
do solemnly swear that I would support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and that I will faithfully discharge
and that I will faithfully discharge
the duties of the office of police officer
the duties of office of police officer
according to the best of my abilities.
according to the best of my abilities.
Congratulations and welcome.
Thank you.
We're very excited to have a Spanish-speaking officer as well. So, I guess bienvenidos.
Thank you.
It's great to have you here. We're very excited, and I hope to see you soon. And if you'd like to do, the photo op swearing in at the, down at the either in Village Hall or at the police station, let me know, and I'll throw a suit on, and we can come do it in person if you want some pictures as well.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be the next week. It can be whenever is good for you, or if you want to have some family there or something. You or the chief can coordinate, and we'll figure it out. So we don't want to lessen this. We do want everyone to be able to see our newest police officer and celebrate with you on Zoom. But we're happy to do it in person as well.
Okay, great.
But otherwise, we look forward to seeing you on the streets.
Welcome. Omar.
Thank you.
Welcome and congratulations.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Next up, we have announcements. The first one, we're very happy, as I mentioned, I think last meeting, that we have the Memorial Day ceremony is back. It's not the expanded ceremony that we were hoping to have had last year, but we are going back to what we were able to do 2 years ago, which is the traditional ceremony on Main Street, followed by a march down the aqueduct to Memorial Park to lay the wreaths and have a second ceremony at Memorial Park as well. So that will be at 10:45 a.m. on Memorial Day, which is Monday the 31st. My calendar is behind me. And we hope to have, I don't think by then we should have restrictions on how many people can attend, Larry, right?
No, I don't think there's any issues with that. It's just,
Yeah. So, and, then, I was talking to Joe Archino and some of the other, Greg Nielsen and I didn't actually get to talk to Jim Brennan, but he was on an email chain where we do hope to continue our work to revitalize and enhance the Memorial Day celebration, hopefully for next year. So we'll probably start getting to work on that in the fall for next Memorial Day, and kind of, bring back the full parade with more participants. And we actually had some great ideas for last year before the pandemic had other ideas. So, but we are glad that we get to have more. Last year we had a kind of a private ceremony that I guess it wasn't private, it was broadcast, but it was limited attendance last year. At least this year we don't have to do that. Next up is a check over $25,000, which is for Fleet Pump and Service Group, Inc., which is the Legend Hollow Booster Station Control Panel Replacement Project from the Capital Fund. And that was $25,220. And I'll also announce that we're having two special board special work sessions on May 19th and May 26th. Details on those will be emailed around, but if you want to save the dates, what we're trying to do is, with so many, we've had some kind of heady topics, including the police reform that took a lot of time. So there's a lot of, smaller projects or, equally important things that we just haven't had the time to focus on. So rather than having kind of marathon work sessions, we decided to break them into smaller bite-sized bits and hopefully about an hour, get through a single topic or maybe two topics that are somehow related. And that's the idea there. I guess the one last thing I'll add is that tomorrow is the school budget vote and board of trustees for the school board election. I think it's unopposed, but there's still an election, and you get to vote for the budget. That is from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. tomorrow at the Main Street School. I just wanted to add that as well. And that's all I had for announcements. I don't know if anybody else had any announcements. If not, I will move to correspondence. Most of the correspondence is related to the public hearing, so I will not read those, but I will read the one that is not related to the public hearing, which is correspondence 4J if you're playing along at home. Dear Board of Trustees of Irvington, I hope this email finds you safe and well. As May is Mental Health Awareness Month, I'm reaching out again to raise awareness about the New York Project Hope, New York's COVID-19 Emotional Support Helpline. It is a program funded by FEMA and managed by the New York State Office of Mental Health. Family Services of Westchester has been designated as a New York Project Hope provider agency in the Westchester County area to provide crisis counseling services and emotional support to individuals and communities who have been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. Our New York Project Hope team has an emotional support helpline that anyone may contact to talk to a crisis counselor about what they're going through and be connected to any resources they may need. The number is 914-708-6104 and it's available Monday to Friday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. The helpline is free, anonymous, and confidential, and no self-identifying information is collected. There's also, you can go to nyprojecthope.org or that's probably the best one. It's the easiest one to, this is obviously posted in the agenda tonight as well. But that's from Emil Millett, who's the crisis counselor for New York Project Hope. That's all I have for correspondence not related to the public hearing. So I will now ask for any public comment that isn't related to the public hearing. So any topic, either not on the agenda, or I guess related to any topic not related to the public hearing. And if there isn't any, I will continue the public hearing to consider a local law amending the Irvington zoning code to create the multifamily office district. So Marianne, I don't know if you want to just maybe give us the changes.
Yeah.
Perfect.
We have a new draft. The date on it is May 13th. There's not a lot of changes. I'll go through them in the order that they're in the draft. The first one's on page 2, and the definition of senior citizen housing is changed so that it says all dwelling units in the building shall be occupied. Well, not the requirements of senior citizen housing. It's changed from 62 to 55. Everybody, all dwelling units in the building shall be occupied by at least one adult aged 55 or older. Previously, it said 62, but the Housing Action Council pointed out to us that under the federal HUD law, that it either has to be one adult 55 or older or all adults 62 or older, and all adults 62 or older seem to maybe miss people that we intended to provide the housing for. So that was changed to 55 or older. Then on the next page, page 3, the senior citizen would be any residential housing, and 10% ordinarily without this provision I'm going to read, 10% of it would have to be set aside for affordable housing. And the affordable housing in the formal sense, under Article 28 of our code, we added the provision that no less than 15% of the total number of citizen housing units must be created as fair and affordable housing units and comply with the requirements of Article 28, which lists all the requirements for the fair and affordable housing. So it was up from 10% to 15%. Then the next two changes are on page 6 and 7. They're just clarifications. Before I just referred to additional coverage. Somebody pointed out that that wasn't clear whether you meant building and lot. I meant both, but just to clarify, I say building and lot coverage at the top of page 6. And I believe it was also on page 7. Or no, actually, maybe it's page 5 and 6. Yeah, the bottom of 5, top of 6. Okay. The next change I don't think is until page, okay, on page, yeah, on page 14 and page 15. The definition of a moderate income unit is the definition of the for sale units wasn't changed. The rental was changed just slightly. A rental dwelling unit that may be rented to only a householder's income does not exceed 80% of the AMI, that's the same, and for which the annual housing cost of the unit does not exceed 30% of said income. We had 33% before, we changed it to 30%, so then that's parallel to the affordable housing requirements. It's 80%, but does not exceed 30% of their income. For purchase, it's still 33% of income. And that change is on page 14 and 15, where it appears twice. And then the last change, which is actually probably the biggest of the changes, is on page 18. And a new provision is added that clarifies or creates a density bonus for all affordable housing developments. So in any permitted multifamily dwelling in which all of the units are fair and affordable housing units as defined in Article 28, a developer shall be allowed to exceed the maximum number of dwelling units otherwise permitted by the zoning code, but in no event by more than 20%, provided that all of the additional units are also fair and affordable housing units meeting all the requirements of Article 28. And then it says that this density bonus shall not apply to senior citizen housing. And the reason that was put in was that the density for senior citizen housing is already quite high. It's 50% higher than multiple family. So anyway, I think there was a way to read the change before to mean that the affordable housing could also get the 20% bonus, but to be sure, it was not clear, and this makes it clear, and it's also in the standout section. And I think that's the end of the change. Those are all of the changes. Oh, except wait, one tiny change. And it's section 10 of the law 22. It just refers to the village map. I actually found there's a code provision that refers to the map, so we have to not only change the map, but change the code provision. But the map isn't changed from what it was before. So that's it.
Okay. Anyone from the board want to say anything now? I mean, I think we're, again, excited to hear what people have to say. We've obviously all read the correspondence, of which there's been plenty. And before we do turn it over to the public, I will ask that remind everyone to say their full name. That was a request from a reporter from the Enterprise. I guess we've been a little lax with that. Brenda used to like them also say your address, but if you could do that as well. And if you try to keep your comments to 3 minutes before, then we'll let someone else speak. And then if you want to speak again, we'll always let you speak again, but we want everyone to get a chance to speak. And so we try to have you keep it to our 3 minutes. With that being said, so we have someone with their hand up already. Get my stopwatch out. Eileen?
Okay, my name is Eileen Watts. I'm a resident of Irvington, and I am against the zoning plan, the rezoning plan, and I would like you to vote against it. And the reason is that if you look at the housing, the development in Irvington that's taken place even over the past 30 years, and I'm talking about, for example, Field Point and Richmond Hill, they were set back significantly from the road. And so in essence, even though I'm sure there was resistance to these communities at the time, there was a lot of thought that went into how these communities were positioned in terms of the setback and the general tone they set in the community. The rezoning plan seems to be a direction that would take the community to a point of no return, because any future development complying with the plan would enable very small setbacks, such as 350 feet or so from the road, and very tall buildings, and would completely change the nature of the village. The rezoning plan as it stands would enable developers to develop buildings out of scale with the Irvington, and would really deplete and detract from Irvington's small town character. So in summary, I would like the zoning board to vote against this plan. It is not good for Irvington, and it's not good for the community and for our small town nature. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's the first time I've heard that 300 feet is not a big setback. And the height is actually 35 feet, just like everywhere else in the village. But obviously, if you don't think 300 feet is a lot, then that's your opinion. So thank you. Appreciate you coming on tonight. Kara?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, because my microphone does funky things. I'm Cara Popiel. I live in Downingwood, and I'm also here to speak against the rezoning. I grew up in Irvington, and I am certainly not against affordable housing here. However, I work in Yonkers, and there's a reason I don't live in Yonkers or Hastings or Dobbs Ferry or Tarrytown for that matter. And it's because of the character that Irvington has always offered. And I think that's really important to maintain that charm that brings people to Irvington to begin with. There's a reason we pay higher property taxes than we would pay living in Yonkers or any of the other historic village towns. I think it's very important to maintain that charm by reducing the higher density properties, especially along Broadway. When you drive down Broadway and you enter Irvington, it's a whole different feeling, and it is what maintains the character of our village. I'm against large scale building, I'm against the higher density, and certainly anything along Broadway that's going to add to that, I think would really ruin the charm that Irvington offers and what brings people to live in Irvington. So I once again speak against the rezoning, and I hope that you will choose to maintain the character and the historic charm of Irvington. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Felix?
Hi, how are you guys?
Good.
I have questions about the I'm sorry. I'm Felix Slurry. I live on Ardsley Avenue West. I'm an Irvington resident. I had two questions about the proposal. The first is around the AMI caps, and I'm just wondering, are the way they're set, would they preclude, for example, police officers, firefighters, and teachers? Would people like that actually make too much money to qualify for an affordable housing development? That's question number one. And then, unrelated question was, there's a lot of, people obviously have a lot of feelings about the density of the development itself. And I'm just wondering, the 67 unit is the number I keep hearing there. Is there a calculation that behind that? Why is it 67? Why isn't it 167? Why isn't it 27? I'm just, and that's probably just me not knowing the context.
Sure. Your first one, I think a family of four, I think the lower AMI, the 80% is about $125,000. And anyone correct me if they remember something different. So, judging on, our police officer tonight, who was reappointed at 78,000. I guess if there was two police officers in that household, they would be over the cap. But our middle, our working class, or whatever what do we call it again? We had a good name for it.
Missing middle?
The missing middle, yeah. Like it's that they would qualify. They'd still qualify for that piece of it. So not the big A affordable, but for our working class middle, which is one of the reasons we thought that was actually something that we thought was important to include. So that was part of our thinking there. And then the second part was, how do we get to the 67 on, I think that's the max on one. It all comes down to, how the density and how much you can actually build. And I will point out to people that is the maximum amount, that if they get all the bonuses, that's how much they can build. So, it's not a given that they get that. There's things that the board of trustees would have to approve, and, things like that. So.
Brian, do you want me to explain how we get that density? And there's a density factor applied anytime you want to develop residential, and depending on the amount of land you divide it by a density factor. We had to come up with a density factor, and the density factor in this district is 3,000. And the reason the board came to that is they looked at the density factors in the other multifamily developments in the village. And all of them were well under that. They were in the area of somewhere between 2,000 and 2,700. And so they decided on the density factor of 3,000.
Thank you. That's helpful. And I'm sure technically my 3 minutes is up, so feel free to shut me up, Brian, and I can re-raise. But I just had a follow-up to your first response, which was, I know as I said in my letter, this wouldn't be my first choice either, but, there's a lot of competing views. I was just wondering if there's any way to incentivize or provide special waivers for certain types of professions. Again, maybe that, falls afoul of discrimination law, but one way I thought people could buy in better was if they knew, hey, it really was going to be the police officers, the first responders, healthcare workers, people who, again, that's a special group of people, if you want to call it that, there may be some way to get people behind the idea more if they knew that was the intended, use. Anyway, just throwing that out there as an idea.
Yeah, it's a great idea. And it used to be the way that our affordable housing used to get bonus points if you're a volunteer fireman, if you were a volunteer ambulance corps. But I think the settlement actually made that discriminatory. So I don't think you can actually give any preferences for anything now, unfortunately. That was a great way to do it in the past, but unfortunately the federal government decided that we're not allowed to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Who's next? Peter Buderi. You also get the extra 30-second frequent contributor bonus, Peter.
Thank you very much, Mayor Smith.
Thank you.
I'm Peter Buderi. I live on Meadowbrook Road. And I'd like to say that the MFO rezoning proposal is really based on a web of misconceptions, which I'll list. Misconception 1 is that Irvington has 30 affordable housing units, as you said, Mayor Smith, twice at a recent board meeting. That only counts the 30 units that are legally set aside as affordable housing. In fact, Irvington has about 500 co-op units that are 80% AMI affordable per Irvington zoning standards. This represents 21.5% of our total housing units. We presented this information to the board in a letter on January 15th. The Housing Committee valiantly but utterly speciously tried to cast doubt on that letter and the data in it. And that evidently gave the board leave to ignore the critical question of how much affordable housing we actually already have. Clearly, the Housing Committee had no idea. That question is critical because the main rationale for the MFO's rezoning from the beginning has been affordable housing. The 6 affordable units each on the 2 large sites were said to justify the massive, out-of-scale, hulking eyesores raised on hills overlooking Broadway and hiding Maxon's historic mansion that MFO would permit. Each building had to be huge in order to subsidize 6 affordable units, or a developer wouldn't build them. Single-family detached homes, the predominant building type in the neighborhood, had to be outlawed, even if they might be the site's highest and best use, and therefore the use is most likely to keep the sites from being purchased by not-for-profit developers. Single-family housing had to be outlawed because it doesn't have a requirement for affordable housing. So we asked the following questions 4 months ago, and I think it's time for the board to answer them or to drop the rezoning. Question 1, how many affordable units does Irvington have now? 2, how many should Irvington have? And what is that based on? How many do neighboring towns and villages have? In other words, at what point will the board stop rezoning single-family zoning districts in order to require more affordable units to be built? 30% affordable? 40%? If the board doesn't know what percentage of Irvington's housing is affordable and doesn't know what percentage should be affordable, I don't understand how it can possibly engage in a rezoning process in favor of affordable housing. Now, I have a bunch of other misconceptions, but I'll stop if you would like to answer those questions, which I would appreciate, and then I'll continue later if you want to end my segment.
Thank you, Peter. Jonathan Casilli.
So much for that.
How you doing, board? Good evening. Thank you for
Great.
having me again. You guys can hear me okay?
Yes, thanks for coming back.
Great. I was here the last meeting, and that was my first time basically hearing about the rezoning, and I had kind of made the point of basically talking about how in the real estate world, from where I work, when we go to do a project, the amount of due diligence that is done prior to starting the project, and relating that to this situation where on the last meeting, we went through maybe a 15-page document that was basically from a third-party engineer who would do all of these inspections where they would analyze the traffic impact, the environmental impact, the water runoff impact and whatnot. And I guess my main question is still relates to that, because from that meeting, the board had basically disregarded one of the main components to this additional development, which is water runoff. Where you're adding lot coverage, you're taking away green space, you're taking away natural drainage and retention of water, where we're having increased storm surges. Like every single year, the storms are getting more abundant, more impactful in short bursts. And when you add more impermeable pavement and structures, you're basically just kicking the water down, basically, which is where I live, which I live right on Broadway, just at the base of where this development would be, which sits right in front of Meadowbrook, which sits right in front of Fargo. And I think that all of those communities will be negatively impacted by these increased storm surges if we don't do any research to understand what kind of zoning we're allowing to go there and how that will impact us, kind of downriver. So I guess my main question for tonight is where did you guys leave off with that document, and have you received any information back from that third party, basically engineer, for lack of a better word, where as it relates specifically to traffic impact and also water drainage, because this development does in fact affect existing drainage routes of water and water tables and all of that.
Yeah, Mary Ann, you want to respond?
Just on the drainage, under the Irvington building laws, and it's reviewed extensively by the planning board and the planning board's engineer, any new impervious surfaces, any new development, the water cannot leave the site. It has to be retained on site, whether it's through, whatever stormwater practices or, drainage facilities have to be put. So that's why, there can't be any runoff. It won't be approved if there's any runoff.
So it's not specific to this zone. It's specific to all of Irvington.
Yeah.
Right, and that's something that you would go and zone an area for specific type of construction.
No. What happens is when it goes before the planning board, any building at all, even adding a deck onto your house, has to go before the planning board. And one of the biggest things the planning board reviews is whether the water's kept on site, is the drainage and whether stormwater runoff. And you can't have any stormwater runoff from any new development.
Gotcha. And then the second part of that question, if I might, was the traffic part, which I think you guys had already contracted that company to look into. Was there a document that was received from them with like a report summarizing how this would impact the traffic in the area?
Did you want me to answer that, Brian?
Sure.
Yeah. Let me get it in front of me. The planning firm we use, AKRF, had their traffic engineer review it. And their finding was that at the peak hour, which is both in the morning and the afternoon, the peak hour would be when there would be the most traffic. If this were fully built out, if the maximum number of dwelling units or whatever were built on all four sites, the maximum number of cars, additional cars in the peak hour would be, I would think it was 55 in the afternoon or 50 in the morning or something like that, which they believed would not have any significant impact, which could be mitigated by different traffic control.
I will mention also that would also be looked at again during the planning board process. So this isn't our only shot at that. When we have an actual plan, Jonathan, they look at it much more carefully and with much more design. Again, we used assumptions of, fully built out with, we had to make a bunch of assumptions. There's obviously less assumptions when you have an actual project, but it's looked at again before.
Absolutely.
Built.
Yeah, that's a good point, Brian, but we just wanted to make sure that the zoning wasn't creating an impossible situation, something that could never be mitigated, and then it wouldn't make sense, but they think it could be. And it would have to be reviewed with any project, and one of the requirements for the special permit is that there not be traffic impacts.
Right. And what you had said though was that the AKRF had suggested that there was to mitigate the additional traffic, there would be I didn't hear you at the end. What was their
No, they don't
suggestion?
know. That would be determined when there's a particular project. They couldn't give the mitigation measures until they know what the particular project is. Because it can be
And you
very
feel-
different, but.
And
You
you
know,
feel
depending-
confident that the fact that this company couldn't produce some sort of resolve for an eventual thing that we're zoning for, you think that the fact that they couldn't suggest something,
Well, you
you're
can
okay,
make up-
you're okay with
if it's
that?
gonna be, if it's gonna be senior housing, you could have a van that takes people to the store. I mean, there's like, you know, you have to know the use before you can really come up with mitigation.
Sure, I
It's
understand.
also-
And the other thing is that additional number of cars is, in the scheme of things, isn't huge. You're talking about, you know, it's 55 in an hour. That it's not a huge increase.
55 in an hour, I guess that's similar to, I guess, the caller earlier talking about 300 feet setback, because 55 cars in an hour in front of my house is actually me not getting out of my driveway. But I understand someone else driving by, 55 is not really that much because it's passing through, but it also depends whether school buses are actually blocking the road, you know, halfway back to Tarrytown, you know, because that kind of happens sometimes too in the mornings when schools are dropping off kids and stuff like that. So from my where I'm coming with this, and I'm definitely over to 3 minutes, and thank you for allowing me to kind of vent and open up to you guys. But really what I'm trying to figure out is if there is a worst case scenario and we have a third party engineer, they are professionals enough to understand that if they have a worst case scenario, they should be able to suggest some resolves for us. And the fact that they haven't either means that A, they haven't been asked, which is okay, we can just ask them, and B, if they haven't suggested anything, maybe they can't figure something out. But I think we have to ask them maybe just to see, and I would hope that maybe you guys, if maybe you have already, and that's kind of why I'm
I'd
asking.
rather have the applicant that has a plan pay for all that time, as opposed to us having come up with, you know, hypotheticals. If it's, you know, what's going to be built there? Is it going to be 25 units? Then, you know, the mitigation is probably nothing. If it's going to be, you know, all 67 on a site, maybe you need to have a shuttle bus every 15 minutes that goes to the train. Like we don't, you know, we don't need to pay engineers to come up with things for problems that, you know, that we don't know what they are yet, I think is my short answer on that.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. I just thought that since we're, you know, we're kind of like putting a stamp on something to say that it's okay to do, like we
But
would.
it
yeah.
still has to go through. I mean, this is one small step. The planning board is much, well, when there's an actual project, it's a lot, you know, there's a lot more analysis that goes on. But
Sure.
thanks again,
Thank
Jonathan,
you.
for coming
Thank
on.
you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Kevin McLaughlin. Can you hear me?
Yep. Hey, Kevin, how are you?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for hearing me. Kevin McLaughlin, Meadowbrook Road, 26 years here. We love the town, raised our whole family here. We are against this. We want you to vote against it. I've been listening to everyone this evening so far, and just to reinforce a few bullet points. One is the water runoff that was just mentioned, that Marianne, you were saying it's contained. But again, think about the world is changing. Think about, I don't know if you guys were here 10, 15 years ago, there's a major flood. I couldn't get home. I had to park my Honda because all the water was flowing down. And I don't know how you can mitigate that when you have some of these major storms, which seem to be happening more and more in the world we're in. So consider that. The other thing is hiding the historic Woodcliff Mansion. Think about some other thing. I'd just like you to think a little bit. When you look at, if you've been on 119 recently, Bed Bath Beyond, they're building a huge parking lot, not affecting us, obviously, but they're building a huge parking lot in front of Bed Bath Beyond. Looks ridiculous. So that, thinking about that, is this going to look ridiculous as far as in front of a beautiful mansion? So again, we're against this. We also heard some rumors that it might make taxes go up. We don't want taxes going up any further. If you look at the article about Irvington over the weekend, which was some was positive, but he read into it also a little bit negative, talking about how bad the taxes are, and we don't want to go any further up. So those are my points to consider. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Dave Gaucho?
Hello, Mayor Smith and Board of Trustees. My name is Dave Gouchot. I live on Meadowbrook Road. I wrote a letter in December inquiring about the tax implications of this rezoning for Irvington property owners. You know, and sort of piggybacking off of what Jonathan said, I mean, I really think that when you're making a decision like this, there should be some analysis done before actually voting. So has that analysis been done? One, and will the tax burden increase for Irvington property owners?
We did do some analysis. I think, was the final version of that presented yet? I think it was.
No, there's no final version of that. We discussed it at the work session, and the discussion at that point was that, you know, we didn't have exact numbers from the assessor, but hearing the potential impact of school children, as well as the impact on the major services of the village, like emergency services, for example, that we were not concerned at that point about the fact that any development would generate more taxes than expenses it would produce. But again, that was kind of a broad look at it during the work session.
Okay, and just for the record, I would like to say that I'm against this proposal. And, you know, I agree with some of the other arguments that people are making, the impact on village aesthetics, traffic, population density. So I just wanted to make that known.
Thank you very much. Let's go to Boris Rubenstein.
Boris and I, his wife Helene, are using the same computer. Hello, good evening.
How are you?
Ladies first.
So I will speak first, and I will do it very, very fast. So 26 ago, we moved into this lovely lane, Strawberry Lane, with is a private road into the Abbott House that I'm learning, if this rezoning goes through with the plans you have in mind, it'll be converted in a two-line street, which completely changes not only the look, but the feel of our street, of our house. And the other thing that I wanted to say is we are so concerned about the environment. It is really a world matter. Is something that we have to be constantly aware of the menace that we are causing to the planet by the way we behave environmentally. And this will and push to convert every green space we have in housing, in urbanizing our beautiful open spaces. It causes damage. People living in those units will produce more garbage, will produce, I don't want to go into this. You all know what I'm talking about. And it is just a shame that boards like yours and people like us living here will not stop doing that. It causes enormous damage. For once, just thinking what's going to happen to me with this thing in front of me, I mean, there's no way I will stay in the village paying the taxes I pay with, as you suppose there's not going to be a traffic problem. There already is a traffic problem. I don't have to wait for that. So for all of these reasons, I would really compel you to vote against this rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can Boris talk now?
Sure, you still have, he has a minute. You get two, he gets one.
So as you heard, we live in Strawberry Lane. This is a beautiful narrow street with a beautiful 100-year-old wall that lines the street. And all I'm thinking about is the plans that I saw, in which outside of my front door, I'm going to see this monstrous building that is going to really change the character of the village.
And our house and our name.
And that house and everything else. I mean, as it is, if I try to get out of Strawberry Lane, sometimes I have to wait for the cars that are going to the school, before I can get out of my driveway. When I get to the corner, sometimes going down to Hastings, I have to wait a while. So, I think that the traffic situation is going to be worse. It's going to change the character of the village. And, we're changing the village, for the next 50, 100 years, way after we are all gone. And I'm wondering how the next generation will judge what we're doing now. So I think that the traffic, the density will be unbearable. This must be another way of planning to have affordable housing that won't have this impact on the quality of life. And for all those reasons, I oppose the rezoning efforts. And I urge you to vote against it.
Thank you so much. Danielle McCauley.
Hi, my name is Danielle McCauley, and after hearing all those great arguments, I was about to put my hand down. I just would like to say I'm a neighbor of those parcels of land. I'm in what Peter referred to as affordable housing. I'm in Irvington Gardens, and it was a little disappointing that he never got an answer to his question about affordable housing and all the co-ops in this town. My main concern is population density. I mean, Lower Westchester is already ridiculous, and traffic. If we think this is not going to kill us with traffic, I don't know what we're smoking. But you even go into the town, and the town is, sometimes you can't even get parking in the town. And you know what? You just leave. Nobody's going to shop there because the town will become, we don't have enough parking as it is in the town to accommodate most people. So I urge you to vote against this project, or maybe consider putting it down Texter Road toward 119. I believe there's a lot of open land there, and 55 cars an hour may not make an impact, and they can go right out onto 119. There's great shopping there and everything. But as it stands now, you go out more than, heavy traffic in the morning and in the evening. Well, that's common sense. It's always going to be heaviest then. But during the day, and I'm about to retire, I'm dreading it because getting out of our driveway can sometimes really be a hassle. And I just don't think this is a good way to go for this quaint little village. Thanks for listening. And I can't be in favor of this project.
Thank you very much. Samir.
Hi, my name is Samir Vasadev. I moved into Irvington 11 years ago from Tarrytown. And I would like you to vote against this rezoning. Part of it, I think a lot of these arguments were made. Part of it is the character of the town. Clearly, I think there's a very clear misunderstanding on the impact of traffic, because if the commentary was only 55 additional cars, it's all about the marginal cars at the marginal time. And, if you have 5 extra cars when it's already a lot of traffic, that's too many extra ones if we can avoid it. And then I'm also concerned about the taxes, which have gone up significantly in this town in the 11 years that I've been here. And I feel, there was, I think Larry mentioned, there was some discussion or analysis that hasn't been shared. I think you have to have, there's a big difference if you have 67 units that are all affordable care that are going to bring in 150 new kids into the school district. Have you talked to the school district of what an influx of 100+ children could be? And do we even have the space for that? As well as the other dynamics when it comes to the additional services. And I feel like it just doesn't, with all of these things going on, it doesn't seem like it fits in the character. I also don't understand, why just single family homes, which is what it's zoned for, and maybe if you want to just rezone it to half-acre lots instead of acre lots. How is that detrimental to the town versus, clearly a lot of people are concerned, including myself, of having this high density project?
Great. Well, all the analysis we've done on the impact on the schools, I think the maximum was about 26. It's all built out, about 26 students. The school population has continued to decline, and they're, I think, about 300 off the max. So, the only way there could be an impact is if all, let's say they were off by a factor of 2 in all of our analysis, and there's 40 kids, and they'd all have to be in one grade basically to have an impact, because they'd have to hire another teacher or 2. But everything we've discussed with the school, there hasn't, they don't have any capacity constraints at all. In fact,
But how does it impact the cost, right? Because that's actually one of the biggest parts of our tax bill.
Correct.
School district. So
Actually,
make the-
Brian, the numbers are much smaller than that. The AKRF did a student analysis, and they thought, based on, they used several different methods, and it ranged from 6 to a maximum of 20 students.
Correct. That's what I'm saying. Even if we're off by a factor of 2,
Yeah, but that's
is,
pretty
doesn't
unlikely.
make any
It wasn't 26. It was 6 in the leap, or 6 to somewhere between 6 and 20.
Correct.
I think it's all about risk, right? So if there's less or you meet it, but what if there isn't and you're off? And then where's the analysis that I guess you guys talked about but didn't share on the tax burden, the increased tax burden, which would be dependent on what type of unit there is. To your point, if there's 25 and there's 0 students, that's one thing. If there's 67 and there's 50 students, which is in the realm of possibilities, what are the impacts? I don't think anybody's seen any of that. That all being said, I feel like if you just keep it as single family homes, it doesn't change the character of the town. It wouldn't meaningfully impact traffic. It wouldn't have an environmental issue. All these issues that everybody's bringing up wouldn't come into place. And it would be, full with the character of town. So I'm not fully understanding why we're even having this conversation. And particularly, I would also like you to answer the questions I think Peter asked earlier, which is, what are the affordable, units in town? Maybe if you don't have the answers right now, you can post them someplace for all of us to see.
Sure.
And then
You're way over your 3 minutes now. And what we'll do is we'll post the county housing needs assessment that was done, and you guys can see all the numbers in there. We have, I don't think we can say every co-op is affordable, because, $350,000 for a 1-bedroom is not considered affordable. Even if we consider it affordable, some people that live in Irvington consider that affordable. But we appreciate your points. Next up is Taylor Palmer.
You, Mr. Mayor, members of the building board. For the record, as the mayor mentioned, Taylor Palmer, the law firm of Cuddy and Fader, on behalf of the owners of the Maxland property, who are also joining us again this evening on the Zoom. Tonight, I'm also joined by our planning consultant, Dave Smith of Planning and Development Advisors. Tonight, we are here to maintain our perfect attendance record. And I'd also like to reserve my 30-second bonus if I still get that. The board sees fit. Additionally, as Mayor Smith mentioned, we are here in connection with the continued public hearing regarding the law to create the multifamily office district. As we noted in our May 3rd public hearing comments, we had submitted a letter to this board dated April 29th, which followed our April 2nd correspondence, enclosing Mr. Smith's letter that was considered at your April 14th work session. So following up on your discussion at your most recent work session, we have had a chance to review your most recent local law dated May 13th, 2021, which had very limited changes. At this time, we do not have any additional comments regarding those minor changes that merely dot some I's and cross some T's. But we also wanted to note that we did have a chance to review the comments posted on the agenda and some of the comments this evening. And while there are a number of comments in support of this zoning change, The remaining comments were those of, that really the board has considered and addressed over the last 2 years of these hearings. At this time, these comments generally seem driven to try and keep this process open indefinitely. To that end, on behalf of the Maxon property owners, we respectfully request that this board consider closing its public hearing on the local law at its June 7th meeting, and the board consider rendering a negative declaration under seeker, which would actually be the third negative declaration regarding the evolution of this law. The Maxon property owners are supportive of the additional goals outlined by the Housing Committee, but again, we must be clear that any further delay will only continue to negatively impact our clients' ability to develop or market the property for an economically viable and tax rateable use of the property that keeps this property on the tax rolls and makes it feasible to maintain buildings like the mansion building that have been mentioned tonight on the Maxon property. So noted before, we believe the village has taken a very hard look, as the prior 2 negative declarations have also indicated, which were rendered on expanded versions of the law, and further that this board has the information it needs to make a reasoned determination on the proposed zoning amendment and to complete the seeker review and hopefully be in a position to vote at the June 7th meeting. Indeed, as the board has noted again tonight, and the village's attorney has previously mentioned, any project, again, this is not a project, this is the zoning amendment, any project in this district will be subject to its own seeker review, the code regulations that are applicable, public hearings, and input from the village and the public specific to a very specific project, traffic, stormwater, all those details, visual and otherwise, will be considered. So from one perfect attendee to another, we all appreciate your time tonight reviewing this matter and your comments regarding the MOD law, and we'll see you all soon. Thank you again.
Thank you. Next up, Kim Raby. Do you want us to come back, Kim? I guess you can't answer.
Sorry.
Can
Can
there you go.
hear me?
Hey, how are you?
Sorry about that.
No problem.
So thanks for the time. I just wanted to so first of all acknowledge I think we've had close to a perfect attendance. We've been engaged in this process for the last 18 months. And I think we've been fairly consistent and transparent in our views. And I will say from the start, from day one, we've been very appreciative of the board and the village's desire to rezone the properties and really wanted to be part of the process. And we do recognize, Mayor, as you've acknowledged, I think in the past, is through our engagement has led to some changes such as sort of the removal of commercial uses and focusing on a multifamily.
Yep.
However, what's really central to our comment and what drove most of our concerns is ensuring the scale of development is in line with the local environment. And as a number of people have mentioned, this is an environment that consists of a very small, private, narrow lane with historic buildings and what is only a half a dozen families. And in many respects, our concern around commercial development hasn't been put at ease by the new proposal, because in many respects, anything of this scale and size is going to be the equivalent to a commercial property in terms of how it's run and operated. Anyway, I feel like despite our constant engagement, the proposal has really gone from bad to worse. The maximum property gross floor allowable area has increased. The number of units have increased. And in many respects, Mayor, as you remember, you couldn't get behind Brightview due to the scale and size. You just took at Maxon. Maxon's half the size, but more than half the units of what Brightview was going to be. So it is not a dissimilar scale and size of what you were concerned with last time. We do have concerns that something of this scale will bring up, who knows, up to 500 people into the village. That's almost 10%. And I know the village has mentioned numerous times that they'll be able to handle the increase in schools, mitigating the impact on traffic. But I think the reality is we're adding almost, it feels like close to 10% to this village. To think that we can operate without needing additional services, I think has been naive. And I think that's in the schools as well as the impact on traffic. I mean, if you've got 170 odd units, to think that we only have 20 school children, people come to Irvington because of the schooling. So it's hard to imagine that even people with seeking affordable housing would not look to bring their children to the school district, I think is naive. So let me just end by saying that we are still very concerned with the size and scale. We want to continue to work with the village to get something which is better in line with the environment. But the way the current proposal is written, that we disagree with it, and we hope that you do not pass it.
Thank you very much. And I appreciate, you and your wife coming to so many meetings, especially when you had to get childcare for the first year or so of this process. So we appreciate, and again, we know because of your comments, your family's comments, we have made what we think is a better zoning.
Let me just end by saying, we don't think it's better. Be
Okay.
very clear.
All right, Glenn Cashin.
Okay, here I am. Sorry about that.
No problem, Glenn.
So my name is Glenn Cashin. I live at 81 North Broadway. I'm no stranger to this opposition process, but I by no means have a perfect attendance record, so I'll keep this.
That's okay.
So I want to add a little visceral impact to this tonight. And this goes back to the work session last week. And as you were going through, I think it's pronounced the seeker form. And there was the question number 9, the impact on aesthetic resources. And while I know that what the question was asking, and understand the answer no on the question itself, I think there were a couple of comments about the proposal or the result of the proposed rezoning that I'd like to address with kind of an analogy. And it was a comment around driving up Strawberry Lane and really the houses along Strawberry Lane not noticing what might land there, the mass that might land there. And also that there already exists office space and multifamily to the north. And the analogy I draw with all that is this: say, you're in your house and you observe your neighbor parking his car across the street for years, and it's a 4-door sedan. It's just a normal car. And then one day he comes home with a tractor trailer, right? And he just leaves the tractor trailer, parked in the street idling. It's an enormous behemoth. It takes up a lot of space. People dropping by have no place to park. The street gets a lot more crowded and a lot more noisy. And I just would like you to keep that in mind as you weigh all these concerns. I'm by no means a civil engineer or an architect, but that's what I have to weigh in on this. And I hope you consider everything that's been said tonight, as well as this analogy, simple analogy, and that you vote no when the time comes on the rezoning issue. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Glenn. We appreciate it. Katerina?
Yes, good evening, Board of Trustees, Village Administrator, Mayor. So I would like to read the email which I wrote to you last week. And I didn't follow today's conversation from the beginning, unfortunately, but I overheard that supposedly the tax rate will not change much. Well, I respectfully disagree with that. And specifically, I would like to point out that Irvington has already lost its balance between the taxpayers and the beneficiaries, between single-family home owners who pay a lion's share of property taxes and hundreds of inexpensive apartment and other rental units, unit owners whose tax burden is shifted to single-family residences. This results in overtaxation of single-family residences, which significantly reduces their values and undoubtedly will result in even higher tax rate in order to fill the budget gap. This is something that has peaked significantly over the last 5 years and was brought on us by Greenberg's reassessment of property values and tremendous difference in taxing single-family residences versus co-ops, condos, and townhouses. For instance, single-family residences are taxed at their property values, and everything else is being taxed from the rental values, which results approximately in 40,000 for single-family residences on average here in Irvington versus only 1,900 for co-op apartment on average. And by the way, here the realtor actually corrected me, saying that with the STAR deduction, these apartments do not pay anything at all. So in reality, it's 40,000 versus 0. This resulted in bringing down property values for single-family home owners. As a family of first-generation immigrants, my husband and I were excited to purchase our first home in Irvington in 2014. The taxes were steep, $38,000 per year, but we decided that it was worth to raise our children in this community. Little did we know that just a couple of years later, our taxes will hike closer to $60,000 per year due to so-called market growth and also changed tax rate. It was 2.8% back in 2014 when we purchased, and it jumped to 3.4% in 2016. This is for a 4-bedroom home on a small lot. We were in shock and disbelief and wanted to move out of Irvington immediately. Unfortunately, this would mean selling at a big loss, which the new tax rate brought on us. And so we stayed trapped. I was pregnant with our 3rd child back then, and this insane tax hike may probably compete in the worst baby shower gift ever. Back then, I wrote to our mayor predicting a downward spiral for single-family residences in Irvington and asking for help. Unfortunately, nothing was done, or perhaps could not have been done.
You're right at 3 minutes, just so you can try to wrap it up.
Yes, okay. As a result, we see single-family residences being sold at a loss here in Irvington. The biggest hit took mentions over $3 million, which lose close to $1 million in values at resale in comparison to their previous purchase price and assessments. Unfortunately, small and less expensive properties are not immune either. Recent sales and local brokers point to approximately 200,000 drop in home values that were selling for close to $1 million just a few years back. And while Irvington still benefits from the mass exodus of young professional families from New York City, once this mass exodus ends, it is logical to expect even deeper decline in property values of single-family residences, which will result in decaying tax base and therefore decaying services for all wealthy and non-wealthy Irvington residents. Hence, it is even more shocking that instead of fixing an already bad situation, Irvington Board of Trustees considers adding even more multifamily developments on already overburdened village tax
4 minutes, Katerina.
The real urgency that Irvingtonians face is lack of large businesses, which would help us to foot the bills, not the imposition of additional multifamily dwellings on the top of hundreds upon hundreds of already existing inexpensive apartments and other rental units. During one of BOT Zoom's meeting regarding rezoning, which took place a few months ago, I remember one local resident presenting the data on how many apartments and other rental units already exist in Irvington. Such dwellings already make up somewhere between 20 and 30% of total housing market, if I recall correctly. Hence, here's my question. When does the board think enough is enough? Well, I'm happy to contribute to a reasonable number of financial diversity in our small village. The importance of a balance is paramount if we want to maintain the same quality of service.
Katerina, we're at 5 minutes. If you want us to come back on, you can, but there's other people waiting right now, so we're gonna have to.
I would like to come back, yes, because
Okay.
I wanted to compare the tax rates between the villages because we are the highest.
Yeah, we all saw your email as well.
Yeah, well, I wanted to
Okay,
speak publicly about
bring
it.
you back.
Okay, thank you.
Alex Hernandez?
Hi. Thanks.
Alex?
Thanks. Can you hear me?
Yep, loud and clear.
Hi. Thanks for the time here.
Sure.
I'll be brief. I live over at 19 Meadowbrook Road. Again, Alex Hernandez, across Broadway from the proposed property to be rezoned. I wrote a letter opposing this in February 2020, and I've signed a few of the petitions in the last year. I'm against the proposal for a few reasons, and I'd ask you to please vote against it. The reasons are consistent with what you've heard. One, small town character. Two, I don't think enough is contemplated to mitigate the traffic. And lastly, we have an opportunity to reduce the tax burden, not just keep it status quo, by increasing single family development that might, generate more taxes per acre and alleviate some of the burden on the existing residents.
Great. Thank you very much, Alex. Appreciate your brevity as well.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming out. Elaine?
Hi.
Hello.
Good evening, Mayor, Board of Trustees, and Village Administrator. Thank you for your continuing attention to this issue and public hearings. I have been a resident of this village since 1994, and I am committed to this village. As I listen to the many comments this evening, I think they fall into two basic categories. One are the people that don't want to see any change in our village. They don't want to see more school students. They don't want to see more traffic. They don't want to see more diverse housing. There's another group of people in this village, which is captured in the statement of the goals of your master plan. There are people who think that our village would benefit from a more diverse housing and a more diverse community. There really is not much of a way of these two different goals being accommodated. They're different goals and they're different focuses. I too came to Irvington for certain things, some of the charms of Irvington. But quite frankly, I was concerned at its how white it was, how racially and religiously undiverse it was. We've come some of a distance, but not as far as we can. And I commend the board in their efforts to have a more diverse housing stock, have multifamily. I admit for my taste, it doesn't go so far enough, and I want the board to move to a greater level of affordability, both for diverse communities, seniors, as well as workforce housing, as opposed to maintaining some more acre single-family homes. So I too, like the rest of the people speaking this tonight, would ask you to further amend your zoning proposal, and especially not to give the density allowed for things that are not affordable. That certainly is the worst of all possible worlds. It brings the traffic that others don't want and doesn't bring the diversity that I thought was part of this board's goals. Again, thank you so much for the attention to this issue, and Godspeed with your deliberations.
Thank you, Elaine. Mark Schneider?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, I think I was on mute. So I've written letters, so I'll be extremely brief. I just wanted to speak out in favor of the rezoning and the affordable housing. And I look forward to increased economic diversity within Irvington. And since I've sent letters, I'll keep it to that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. Peter Boudieri, the first of the repeats.
Good evening. So to continue on the misconceptions that I believe that the rezoning proposal is based on, number two is that our existing affordable housing stock doesn't really count because it's too old, because it was all built before 1955, referring to the co-ops, the garden apartments. In fact, in the Westchester Housing Needs Assessment, it shows that not a single unit of housing in Irvington was rated substandard. And that's a distinction that none of the other river towns or the town of Greenburgh or any of Greenburgh's villages can boast. I'd love to know, if you know, what percentage of all of Irvington's homes were built before 1955. I know that mine was. Misconception 3. A couple of people recently spoke about. Irvington needs economic diversity. The Westchester Housing Needs Assessment will say, it won't tell you how many affordable units we have in Irvington, but does say that our owner occupants median income is in the bottom half of Westchester's town and villages, number 20 out of 37. Our renters' median income is in the bottom 10th of Westchester's towns and village, number 35 of 37. And I think this is widely known. Larry Schopfer and Tom Thacker said as much in a recent work session. So my question is, how do you, as a board, define economic diversity, and how low should Irvington's median income go before we are adequately diverse economically? Misconception number 4, racial diversity will follow economic diversity. My question is, if racial diversity follows economic diversity, and we're in the bottom half of Westchester's towns and villages, why aren't we already racially diverse? Misconception 5, the allowable apartment building on the Maxon property is consistent in scale with the community. In fact, a 67-unit elevator apartment building with double-loaded corridors is a very different housing type from a garden apartment cluster like Irvington Gardens, which has individual entrances to each unit and where the units run the full depth of the building. The allowable Maxon building has a 191 by 215 foot footprint. At 120 North Broadway, the individual 4-unit blocks are 27 feet by 79 feet. Misconception 6, that the planning board and the architectural review board will take care of the architectural issues such as scale and massing, which the rezoning allows to be utterly out of scale and context with the surrounding neighborhoods. In fact, the planning board doesn't have jurisdiction over issues of scale and context that are not prescribed in the zoning code. And the architectural review board can't regulate anything larger than facade detailing, as we learned when the ARB disapproved the siding and massing of a home renovation in Ardsley Park and the trustees overruled them. Misconception 7, bringing affordable housing to Irvington will allow our teachers, police, and other municipal work employees to live here close to their work, which is a benefit to the community as well as to those employees. The same statement was made about the affordable housing development above the library, and that didn't pan out because, in fact, such units have to be offered by lottery. So concluding, I agree with Maxon's lawyer that the process has gone on much too long. Since the trustees have failed to answer these questions and don't even know, evidently, how many affordable housing units we have in town and how many we should have, in light of the clear fact that this rezoning will degrade our small town character and would likely harm our tax base and traffic, I believe that the trustees should vote it down or permanently withdraw it. And again, regarding posting the Westchester Housing Needs Assessment in order to give the crucial information about how many affordable housing units we already have, it's not in there. All right, thank you very much for hearing me out.
Peter. Lisa again.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, hi. So I'm not a stranger to this issue either, and you've received my letter, so you know where I stand. I am for everybody listening, I am a proponent of an all affordable housing development on these properties, and I would love I appreciate the changes that the board has made to move in that direction, and would love the board to go even further to incentivize an all affordable development. I'm not going to reiterate what my friend Elaine has said, but I just want to underscore my agreement with her overall assessment that what we're hearing a lot of tonight is a fear of change and a desire to keep things as they always are, which is, while understandable, should not govern this process. One thing I do want to say about the work that the board has done is that it's obviously been exhaustive. And I hear a lot of sort of discrediting and wanting to do a de novo review of things that the board has studied, like the impact on parking, the potential impact on taxes, the impact on our schools. Everyone seems to have a lot of fear around issues that the board has actually addressed and studied and determined to be not an overwhelming concern, like the storm drainage, all of these other pieces that have been part of the analysis. So I want to commend the board for doing that and to try to urge the folks on the call who are afraid of change to have some trust in the analysis that has been done. And then the last thing I want to say is I want to say a few brief words about taxes. So first, as I just said a moment ago, I heard the board say that the analysis shows that there's unlikely to be an impact on taxes, but I had a paragraph that I was going to send in the letter I sent to the board at the end of last week that I took out, and I'm just going to very rapidly, because I'm a fast speaker, read it now. There are many things to say in response to the tax argument, but I will keep this brief. We are all part of society, and we all deal with substantial burdens and minor inconveniences to make the society livable, not only for ourselves, but also others. The fact that some people's emergency C-sections might make everyone's health insurance premiums go up doesn't mean that men should refuse to pay their premiums. I do not argue that my tax dollars shouldn't be used to build ADA compliant ramps just because neither I nor any of my family members require the use of a wheelchair. I am not sure where the logic of not letting anyone move into our village who will pay less in taxes than I do stops. There are surely many people in the village who, like me, own single family homes and who pay more in taxes than I do. Am I mooching off of them? I prefer to consider how lucky we are to be able to afford to live in this beautiful place and to welcome the opportunity to share this bounty with others for whom attaining the dream of owning or renting an apartment here, much less owning a single family home here, is much more difficult to achieve. Thank you so much for the time. My name again is Lisa again. I don't think I said it at the outset. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Lisa. And next up is Francis Gowdy. Hey, Francis. Do you want us to come back to you, Francis, maybe? So you can get off mute. Larry, why don't we come? Oh, there we go. Hey, Francis.
Hi. As you might expect, I'm not thrilled with this undertaking. I've been involved in the examination of the North Broadway corridor going back to 2016 or 17 on a subcommittee that reported to the Comprehensive Plan Committee.
Correct.
From the outset, we were directed to examine rezoning this area. Now, shortly before that time, the area was rezoned to 1 acre. Is that right, Brian?
That's correct.
What was the rationale behind making it 1 acre?
I'd probably have to go back and see what we were talking about at the time.
No, you were there. I'd like you to tell me.
Honestly, I'm assuming it's to keep more open space there.
Okay. All right. So what
I think it was actually in reaction to the Brightview project and the other projects like that, which is why we decided to have a comprehensive plan committee look at it specifically.
Okay, and then there was a sudden about face in the space of about a year or 2 years, where 4 or 5 property owners are going to be given a giant gift in that their property is going to be much, much more valuable. I think it's cynical to believe that we can change the entire world by making a handful of cheap houses at the expense of everybody else. If you look at some of the other affordable housing situations, say in Greenberg, the turnover in Greenberg Housing Association is 2%. So 98% of people never ever move from that situation. So what you're doing is basically kind of like rent control in the city. You're just saying, I'm going to favor this person or that person, say in a lottery, and you're going to permanently, because they don't move, as evidenced by Greenberg Housing Association's statistics, kind of like it's like one of those old stories when you were a kid and you knew someone's great aunt who had this 3-bedroom apartment that overlooked the East River, and she paid $700 a month for it. And that's all you're going to create. So you're going to have this little class of people who don't earn as much as everybody else around here, and they're going to be in this enclave, and somehow you think you're going to be doing good. And at the same time, you're going to take 4 or 5 large, wealthy property owners, and you're going to endow them with increased value. All the while,
you're
going
over 3 minutes. If you could try to wrap it up.
All the while, you're going to densify that area and make it out of characteristic with the rest of the village, and create additional traffic issues. So I just don't get it. I don't see that there's an enormous upside here. And I would encourage the trustees to look at the village as it is, why we all moved here, what we like here, and act accordingly.
Thank you, Francis. I think Arlene is new.
Hi, I'm Arlene Burgos. I live on Riverview Road. I just want to, and I sent a letter also, and I have sent other letters, but I guess when I listen to these calls, some of the things that concern me the most is when we talk about sort of the charm of our village and sort of maintaining the status quo. I understand like the fear of change, but I want to commend the board for stating, that it has this commitment to find some affordable housing. Not only does, this is not just Irvington, but these are other towns and villages in Westchester that have this obligation. And there's just some quotes from tonight that really bother me, how low should we go? And we pay, higher property taxes for a reason. Those things kind of sadden me to hear that from my neighbors. I think I can understand the argument that, you live on a street and there's going to be development there. I think that is a risk for a lot of property owners when you sort of buy a house and there's this big empty property, and unfortunately, there's a housing shortage, and housing is necessary. And I think, I commend the board for trying to diversify the housing stock in Irvington. And again, for, just thinking that what is affordable, to think that co-ops, that could go for $300,000-$400,000 for a 1-bedroom or even 2-bedroom are affordable for young families, for people who work in this town. I personally think there's a lot of richness in having a diverse group of people live here. And we're not going to get that, right, as property values go up and up. And I would also say that for people who, if you buy a house, depending on when you buy your house, you may buy on the up, at the top of the market. So just to say that certain houses have lost value doesn't mean that the town, in and of itself is losing value. I think some people buy high or some people overpay for their homes, and that happens, right? That's part of the deal. But I just want to say that, those kinds of comments in this conversation, I wish that they didn't exist, and I wish that people would, you can focus on whether you want development there or not without the underlying racism that is often in a lot of those comments. So that's all I wanted to say for tonight.
Thank you. I believe David Swibell is new. Well, for tonight.
Hello, Brian.
How are you?
Good. David Swibell. I just wanted to comment that, of course, I put in a letter, and you've all looked at the letter, and that has my very serious thoughts in it. But listening to this meeting tonight, I have to agree completely with Lisa and some of what Arlene just said. that many of the comments that are raised tonight that are against multifamily housing have a lot of false flags and have been issues that you as a board have looked into very closely. I'd just like to point out just a couple of them. There was a mention about Field Point. Well, Field Point is actually, I live in Field Point. It's actually much closer to Broadway by about half, as this proposed 250-foot setback is. So that is a false flag. Another false flag is the concept of multifamily housing being out of character with the neighborhood. Irvington is very much divided by Route 9. There is west of Route 9 and there is east of Route 9. I will agree that the majority of the housing in Irvington, in the entire village, is single family. However, if you look at Broadway from one end of the village to the other, starting at the south and going north, the majority of that housing is actually multifamily. When you include, Downingwood, you go to Field Point, you go to the stuff on South Broadway at the top of the hill at Harriman, and you go all the way up to Irvington Gardens and to the end of Irvington, which is Sunnyside. So if that is the neighborhood, and a multifamily development there is not out of character at all with what exists on the east side of Broadway from the beginning of Irvington to the end of Irvington. Then there was a comment about affordability and who could afford this or not. The for purchase AMI for a 4-person family requires an income of $125,000 a year. Now, in the minutes of this meeting is a list of 66 village employees and their salaries. Of that 66, 6 are over that 125,000 limit. All of the rest are less than that. And many of them, even 2 of their salaries combined, will not make that $125,000 unit. That's village employees. That doesn't even start to talk about school teachers or workers in our community in general.
David, you just went over 3 minutes, so if you want to try to wrap it up.
Okay, my comment is you are doing good work. The one last quick comment that I would like to make is I would like you to reconsider the senior housing, and I must agree with the proponents of high density. The senior housing, as it is written in the code right now, will allow 90 units of senior housing if all conditions are met. To me, that is going a little high and would be setting the stage for the developer to make his most money by selling it as luxury to a developer who would offer luxury senior housing. And I'm not sure Irvington, it benefits Irvington to have of the 90 units, it would be 76, I believe, or 74, something like that, of luxury units, when the remaining being affordable. I'm not sure that's a good public benefit. So I would like you to ask to relook at the density for senior housing and not make that the sort of most profitable area.
Over
Thank
4
you.
minutes, so.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Natalie Burrito.
Hi, it's actually Dave Osborne, husband to Natalia Broido. We live at 93 North Broadway, been here for 12 years. We love Irvington. We've actually been willingly paying school taxes, not having ever put any one of our children through the Irvington schools. Thank you for your service and for your thoughtful deliberation on the proposed change to the zoning. We're strongly against it. We're not afraid of change. We love the town. We love the fact that people are engaged. Our primary concern is density and traffic. And there have been a lot of very, very good points that have been made. And I don't think I need to, I haven't written any letters. I'm not actively involved in this process. You never see me at any of your hearings, but I am strongly against this rezoning. Thank you very much.
Appreciate you calling in tonight. Joy Gowdy. Looks like you're good to go, Joy. Joy, we'll come back to Joy. We'll come back to Joy. We'll go with Steve Salamani.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can, Steve.
Hi, how are you? I live across the street on North Broadway from this proposed development and zoning change. I think that the buildings are definitely out of scale with the village of Irvington. I think it would also detract from Irvington's small town character. That's why we moved here. The charm of the village would definitely would not, it just wouldn't be, it's not what Irvington is about. And I just think that, by hiding, the historic Woodcliff Mansion by some big monstrous looking building, that's not in tune with the character of the village. It just doesn't make sense. And I think that they should find a different location for something like this and should look into more sites. And yeah, I'm completely opposed to the project. And specifically the location, the traffic that it would cause major problems on Broadway. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming on tonight, Steve.
Thank you.
Try Joy again. Go ahead, Joy. Looks like you're on mute now. Larry, why don't we go to Kay O'Keefe? Oh, Joy, you're there now? Okay, we'll go to Kay O'Keefe.
Can you hear me now?
Go ahead, Kay. Yep, we hear you.
Okay, so my name is Kay O'Keefe. I've lived in Irvington for well over 20 years. I'm very distressed about a lot of the things that I've heard tonight. And I think many people are exhibiting an enormous amount of selfishness, that this is theirs, Irvington is theirs, and they don't want to share it with anyone else. And I've heard several other things that are really incorrect, that the building would be out of character with the area. So I believe that it can't be more than 3 stories. Is that correct?
35 feet. So same height as any other building in Irvington.
Okay, so Woodbrook Garden is 3 stories. Isn't that correct?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, so Woodbrook Garden is what, a half a mile from there? It is not out of character with the area. Woodbrook Garden is right there on Broadway. It is not out of character with the area. And people keep on talking about the character of Irvington. You know, Irvington in, I don't know, the last 30 years or whatever has gotten very, very rich. But the character of Irvington was not always very rich. Houses were built in Irvington for workers. And this is something new, relatively speaking, that workers can't afford to live here. So I think when people talk about the character, they're imagining a character that occurred sometime later. Even when the richest people lived in Irvington, there was affordable housing for the workers in Irvington. And now to reject the notion that we would want working people in Irvington is just awful and selfish. And it makes me feel really sad. That's all.
Thank you, Kay. Karen Schatzel, first time caller tonight.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. I've spoken before, as you know, too many times probably, but Kay encouraged me to speak because I was also upset about the elitism expressed by a number of people tonight. And I wanted to address three different things. And one was affordability, which I've also spoken about before, because when my husband and I came here, and I've spoken about this, I apologize, but it was 53 years ago and we paid $7,200 for our apartment in Half Moon North. And that was a stretch because my husband was a Korean War veteran and I was a stay-at-home mom at a time when we were still washing diapers and artificial diapers hadn't even come in yet. But in any case, I was very happy at Half Moon Apartments. I was also very happy when we bought our first house in 1977. And we bought probably the most modest house in Irvington. But in any case, it was affordable for us. And I think there are many people who don't understand that when we talk about affordability, we're talking about working people, as Kay said. These are not people who are on public assistance. These are working people, the people who work for us in our village all the time. And the second thing is the lack of understanding about taxes, because as has been repeated, the mayor and the village attorney both addressed both the taxes, school taxes, and the census, which is very low. And again, having worked many years ago on a committee, a long-range planning committee for the school board, I know how bad it can be when the census drops too much and we can't even offer the quality education in a number of courses that we want to offer. We can't. Right now, we have more professional staff that we need for the actual census. And also, we can't field athletic teams, which seems so much more important to many people. But the last thing that I wanted to mention was that a lot of people aren't aware of the fact that the biggest challenge for County Executive Latimer and Westchester County as a whole is economic development. He is trying to develop more companies coming here to relieve the tax burden. And one of the biggest single problem for him, challenge, is affordable housing. The county cannot develop as fast as it's working to do so enough economic development, because when companies look at Westchester, they say, yes, it's a very desirable area, but our workers can't afford to live there. So I think people should be thinking beyond the borders also of Irvington. If they're concerned about their taxes, if they're concerned about preserving their quality of life, they should think about what's needed to do that. And part of that is the economic development for the county, which is in affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karen. Katerina, thank you for your patience.
Well, thank you for allowing me to speak again.
Sure.
So talking about the taxes. So for comparison purposes, I combined a few tax rates from the other nice villages here in Westchester, which also have even more competitive and thus higher rated school districts than Irvington. So Scarsdale has a tax rate of 2.4%, Rye only 1.5%, Bronxville 2.3%, Larchmont 2.2%, Irvington 3.2%. Average tax rate in Westchester County in 2001 is 1.6%, and yet in Irvington we pay twice as much. So no wonder the new buyers largely prefer other Westchester municipalities to Irvington, because we are paying the highest taxes here in Westchester and probably in the whole country, because Westchester is notorious for being the most expensive. And so talking about that, I believe that Irvington Village is already in a downward spiral, because the higher taxes bringing down the property values, which results in decaying tax base. In order to fill that gap, the taxes would have to be raised again, which in its turn will devalue the property values even further. So it's a death cycle. And I don't really understand. So what percentage does the board think is acceptable? 4%, 5%, 10% of the property values? I do not understand. And talking about affordability, this very high tax rate makes single family homes less and less and less affordable, because people do not mind investing money in the property values, thinking that at some point they'll take it out. But paying that much in taxes is just simply not right. And again, we are paying the highest rate. And one more thing I wanted to say, especially with yet another defamatory accusation of racism, which is coming from so-called Irvington activists and also so-called Diversity and Inclusion Committee. So according to Irvington activists, everyone who is concerned with absolutely insane property tax bills and losing property value is a racist. Apparently, in order to prove that we are not racist, we should default on our mortgage and tax payments and let the banks take possession of our properties. Honestly, this is defamatory, this is outrageous. And what I really consider is racist and fascist is forcing the school district to hire so-called consultants who want to insult little children by telling them that white children are born racist and to violate black bodies, which is absolutely unacceptable, especially for me as an immigrant. Honestly, this is simply shocking. And I hope that the Board of Trustees would take everything being said into consideration and makes the decision which would be right for our village and all of us care about village. I mean, we picked it as a place to live, to raise our children for very good reasons.
Over 3 minutes again, if you could wrap up.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much,
So I'm
Catherine.
done.
New, I see PJ.
Good evening.
How are you?
Hi, Mayor Smith. First time, long time.
Thanks for joining us.
There's a petition in the correspondence there. You'll have seen the text. It's still kicking around Irvington, so we're not formally submitting it, but I wanted to let you know that right now it has 300 signatures expressing complete opposition to the rezoning. And I just wanted to draw your attention to the fourth one of the bullet points. It's called Meet in the Real World, which is essentially asking the board to hold off on a final vote until everyone can actually meet in person. That feels like it's just around the corner. I'm not sure what the village's plans are. It's possible that that meeting could actually happen outdoors based on what you just said about the Memorial Day festivities. I bring it up in all seriousness because even though I'm new to Irvington, I remember, as I'm sure you do, that moment last year when we were still talking about the assisted living facility and the lady whose name I can't remember, but she's the head of the ambulance corps. She stopped in at the meeting in person, I think on the way home from work, and she single-handedly changed the entire conversation about that assisted living facility, talking about the drawdown on resources, right? That moment simply cannot happen over Zoom. I don't think I need to convince you of that. I just want you to remember that. So my question is, can you commit to just hanging back on the vote until we can all meet in person like normal people again?
Well, we're kind of waiting to hear from the governor on when that could be. We're not sure. You know, they're obviously reopening a lot of things, but he hasn't come up with meetings yet.
What about, sorry, but, and this is a little out of the box, but what about meeting outdoors? In all
Problem
seriousness,
with outdoors, we have to record and broadcast our meetings, so it would be potentially complicated to do that. But
okay,
we might have more guidance this week. It seems things are happening quickly. So who knows if we have a meeting in June that's in person.
Okay.
I'm not exactly sure why you think the in-person meeting is so important, but I actually think we've had much more participation when people have been able to dial in from their homes. But
what about from senior citizens though?
I haven't heard from any of them that they haven't been able to participate and they wanted to. We've had a bunch participate tonight.
That could also be evidence that they're actually participating less, right?
Well, I mean, they could send me a written letter or an email in 2 years. So if they had something to say, I can't imagine that they haven't told us already. Or if they even said, I want to speak in person or whatever, I'd meet with them in person if they had something to tell us.
Okay, I'm just going to point out, and again, I don't mean to be difficult, but this multifamily option has really only been discussed entirely within the pandemic, right? So it was
So it's always been a part of we just gotten rid of other uses. This has always been part of the use from before we started.
Right, but that use was 26 units, as you recall, right? It only went to 67 in November.
I don't think that was the case. I don't know if it was ever hashed out completely how many units there were, but multifamily was, from the get-go, one of the main uses. But
Right,
anyway.
it was never discussed, of course, which is the point of a hearing.
Okay. Thank you, PJ. Stephanie F. Hello, Stephanie.
Hello, my name is Stephanie Fable. I live on Strawberry Lane, and I have a question for Trustee Silverberg. Silverberg, before you were in office, you were quoted as saying, "To me, good government means reaching community consensus on our goals and priorities and doing the work necessary to accomplish these goals." So my question is, why are you on the verge of voting for this massive change to the scale and density of Irvington when there's no community consensus whatsoever? According to Peter, 300 people are telling you that this is a bad idea and that the number is only going to climb when people start seeing these pictures. So in the interest of consensus, will you commit now to not voting until the proposal has wide community support?
To give you a yes or no answer, I'm not going to commit to saying that we have to have evidence that the majority of the people who live here support a particular proposal before we can vote on it. The process of building consensus is long and difficult. I'm listening very carefully to everybody who speaks tonight. We've been through many meetings here. I'm also very aware that people have come into this process at various points along the way. We are listening carefully, and that's all I can tell you. That's all I will say at this point.
Thank you, Stephanie. I think it's all repeats now. So let's go with Kevin, who was the first to raise his hand for a second time. That's in the queue.
All right, I'll keep it short again as best I can because you guys look fried.
First, again, I've been here 26 years, so you might think I'm an old timer. I'm not, but I'm not against change. I like positive change. A good example is, I'm always complaining about taxes, and the school taxes, for example, just keep on going up and up. But we drove last night to the high school and looking at the field and the signs, it's beautiful. I mean, I don't like paying more tax. My kids are out of school now, but I think that's an attractive additional positive change to our town. The traffic issue, I think you do need to, I know a lot of people have been harping on it, but we live right here. And, another 55 or whatever the number is, you don't know exactly now. It could be less, it could be more, driving through this area. Right now, for the last 2 years, I've been going around kind of a U-turn all the way around to Fargo and then getting to the red light because it's impossible to get out in the morning or in the afternoon around school time. So you got to think that's going to get worse. Ambulance, it sounds like this was brought up about the assisted living. If there are more apartments there, there's more ambulances going, that shuts things down again. And think about when an ambulance comes by, everything stops. The 55 cars is just expanding on it. And the last point I'll make is that gentleman, PJ, I'm in sales. So the Zoom meetings, they're great, but I agree, it would be nice to have it in person. And it sounds like we're getting closer to that point. So I know when I'm trying to present something, like you can't see me right now, you can't see my reactions. So if you could wait a couple months and we're getting close to maybe having a live meeting, I think that would make some sense. Thank you.
Thank you. And I do think that traffic is going to be the one that's going to be the hardest for developers to overcome of all the issues that people have brought up, because it is already bad. I come out of Riverview and I have to do the same thing. I have to go right and then try to make the left and then come around. So I know exactly what the traffic issues are. But to me, we don't have to solve their issues. They have to figure out how to solve those. So we'll see what happens with that. But that is definitely a concern. Thanks, Kevin. Beth Proper is new.
Sorry, I just had to unmute. Hi, everyone. Thank you for all your work on this project.
Sure.
I do have a question, just a quick question. It's not a comment. I was listening to your work session, I guess last week, and you were going through the SECRA process. And I'm just trying to understand, I think other people are interested in this. Does the board have to put out an environmental impact statement on your SECRA before you vote on the rezoning? And if so, is there a period for public comment on the environmental impact statement? I guess Marianne will probably answer.
Always defer to council.
Yeah, no, you don't have to do an environmental impact statement. You've got to can do an environmental assessment form and then answer all the questions on what's called the part 2 of the environmental assessment form, which the board did at the work session last week. And then based on that, if they can make the determination that either there'll be no impact or that the impacts will be small, then they can issue a negative declaration. They don't have to do an environmental impact statement. You only do an environmental impact statement if you do a positive declaration. But what the board has done, it's a slightly different process. It's been approved by the Court of Appeals. You can have get studies done of the impacts you think there could be, the potential impacts, which the board did. So they had traffic looked at, had impact on community services looked at, and if after those studies you can say either there'll be no impact or only small impacts, then you can issue a negative declaration. And yes, there has been input. There's been plenty of opportunity for public input on that. I think it was 2 meetings ago, either Brian or I made the point of saying that the environmental assessment form was there for any comments. Larry has attached it to the agenda. It's been included with the agenda items, and so there could be input at the last meeting. It was considered at the work session. Of course, there wasn't public input at there. And then tonight, there can be any comments on it. And you could hear there were plenty, as several people made comments about issues that were identified in the environmental assessment form. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. So comments can also be made by letter, I would suppose, after tonight's meeting.
Correct, or email.
Yes, but it's best to do it before June 7th. Yeah.
Absolutely. And then the other thing, I just want to join some of the speakers. I do actually concur that with all the changes post-pandemic, with the opening up of open meetings being available off of Zoom, that it could be very good for furthering the sense of consensus in the community if that is possible for the board to consider in the future. Thank you so much.
I think it's also important to remember, Marianne, that there will also be another environmental impact study done if there's actually a proposal. So it's not, if this is on the zoning piece of it, not on, a final project, or because there obviously are no proposals.
Oh, yes. And yes.
So there'd be another detailed one that would, go into.
Come with any projects that come up before, but there's no more, but I was just wondering if there had been a formal negative declaration.
No, but there will have to be one before the board votes on it. But Brian, just to correct it, there won't necessarily be an environmental impact statement. There'll be an environmental assessment form, and then maybe an environmental impact statement. But there has to be a full secret review.
But
I don't want somebody saying later on that the mayor said there's going to be an environmental impact statement. There's a better way to do secret than requiring environmental.
Right, but right now attached to the agenda for anyone who's interested, they can see where the board is at this time.
Exactly.
Correct.
Thank you.
And Beth, on the agenda for tonight, previously it didn't have what the board's answers were, but the one attached to the agenda tonight does have the board's answers to it, because they talked about them at the work session last week.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Adi Bloom, another new caller.
Hey guys,
how are
my
you?
name's Adi. Doing well. Appreciate all your work. My name's Adi Bloom. I live at 7 Irving Place, right across from Abbott House, right down the road from you, Brian.
Yep.
Yeah, as I said, I appreciate all of your efforts to try to get this right. I'm very concerned about the proposed changes, and I mentioned my concerns in a meeting before the pandemic. I'll pile on to the concerns about traffic. My brother-in-law, when he was visiting, he had his car totaled coming out of Riverview. Our kids go to Good Shepherd. We have a 2.5-year-old and a 5-year-old. And it's always a challenge getting just driving that short little stretch, and that's without this proposed large development that's going to bring a significant increase in traffic. Not to mention that there's no sidewalk on Riverview. It's tough to walk our dogs, and what cars do now is they come up Strawberry Lane and then they circle around Abbott House and go down Riverview. I can only imagine what Riverview might look like in the future if this goes forward, and not to mention all the kids at the middle school and high school who walk out, whose parents come and park on Riverview to pick them up because the traffic's too much on the road up to the high school. We lived on Continent Street for 4 years before moving up to Irving Place, and I don't think we'd ever have moved up here had we known of this potential development. The development's going to totally change the character of this neighborhood, and it doesn't feel necessary to me. So I recognize this isn't easy, and appreciate all your efforts. And finally, I like the idea of having an open meeting, and not rushing it through before the pandemic allows for an open meeting. So again, thank you for everything.
Thank you very much. Michael Hanna.
Yeah, hi. I just want to weigh in to say thank you for leading this careful process in which there's been numerous iterations, and that you are indeed listening closely to all the different residents that have been providing feedback over this long period. And I mean, from my understanding in terms of scale, I think you said it earlier, but they can't build buildings higher than they've already been built. Is that correct?
Correct, 35 feet.
And what's the setback from Broadway?
There's basically it's 300 feet or 250 if they do something that benefits the village. Is that right, Marion?
No, it's 250 feet, but in that 250-foot setback, between 250 and 300 feet, it can only be 2 stories high. It isn't until it gets to 300 feet that they can go to the full 3 stories.
Yeah.
Or 35 feet.
I do.
Yeah,
appreciate that you're-
35 feet, yeah.
I do appreciate that you're working to create zoning that will, provide the kinds of benefits to the village in terms of helping to try and continue to make sure that it's, a tax-paying property. So that's important. I think that your notes about, the impacts to our schools are correct, that it's, very reasonable and acceptable. So I think, and we have to remember properties sort of go in cycles, where their school-age children are not. I'm happy to say I have 2 children who are graduating. We plan to live in Irvington for a very long time. That's a property that had kids and now won't have kids. And that's the case for these properties as well, that at different times they may have 22 or they may have 6. So, we just have to realize that it's not, always going to be the high or the low. It's just, but regardless, the number itself is, in terms of the potential high, or even as you said, Mr. Mayor, the double of that would still be in a zone that I don't think is too challenging for the school district, because as you said, they wouldn't all be in a single class. I mean, the odds of that are very, very low. So just to keep it short, I do appreciate the work that you're doing. I had one question, which is that, I questioned the senior restricted. I've heard a few comments in the past that help maybe explain why. I mean, for me, when I would think about why you would want to try and have senior housing, it's because of that affordability issue. So that if these senior restricted housing are market rate for the most part, I know that you set aside perhaps 15% for affordable. Why do you think this is helpful for seniors if they're able to pay a market rate of $700,000, $800,000, $900,000 or whatever that we think that the rate would be? Why do you think that would be helpful to seniors?
I think some of it is that most of the housing in Irvington, the housing stock is older and it isn't built specifically for seniors with accessibility and elevators and things like that. I know my own mom was 80, we're looking to find her, kind of a co-op or something, but, not having, access to a washer dryer in a unit, not having to go upstairs at all, things like that. So I think there's potentially things that can be built for seniors that aren't in current housing stock is one of the reasons. I mean, feel free to anyone else to join in, but that's one of them. And obviously affordability is potentially one. I mean, obviously not if it's market rate, then it's not necessarily affordable, but that's part of the thought process.
Yeah, I would just say that, I think the affordability would be the most important component for someone who's trying to, who has fixed or limited income, in their, as a senior. And I know that I live in multifamily housing, that folks who need to make adjustments, have renovated their apartment to make them safer as they are able to age in place. So I'm not sure that we have to have a senior restricted. I think the ability to have this option for more affordability and thus supporting seniors and workforce and folks who want to get a foothold into Irvington in a way that if you don't have a lot of income at the outside of the career.
We're just a little over 4 minutes. So
yeah. So
are
you including your answer? I'm just kidding. But anyhow, I think I think you're so close, and I appreciate the work you're doing. And so my one request would be just to remove that aspect and to focus more on the affordability issue. So thank you so much for what you're doing, and I support overall the effort.
Thank you. One more quick point on the senior housing is that the number of units is greater, but the size of the footprint of the building's the same. So, the way we looked at it too is the units are going to be smaller. So that makes them, less luxury housing. I think it was the way you phrased it, it was going to be luxury housing. So, the market or, economics would reduce the cost of the units because they're just going to be smaller in the same footprint of a building. And the reason we went with more units is we figure seniors to potentially drive less. There's no school impacts or much less school impacts than we already anticipate. So that was a little more of the thought process there. And we think we have a new David, Larry, down the bottom. Hello, David.
Sorry about that. I must have raised my hand by accident. I apologize. Just
No
listening.
problem. That's okay. We know it works. Felix, you're back.
I couldn't resist. This is too interesting a discussion. First, I'd like to say I really don't envy you guys. I think I mentioned that in my letter. You're stuck between some pretty intractable positions. So, and I could, which I can completely understand a lot of the perspectives that have been mentioned. I just had a few things I wanted to ask or comment on. One, on the school children, Mayor, maybe you could just go through the numbers again. One of the things I was wondering about is whether some of those projections take into account, all the recent move-ins from this, of which I am one, by the way, that brought young kids here, and whether the school is at any realistic risk of going over capacity. I agree with everyone that said there's like zero chance that all the kids are going to be in one grade, but I just was curious about that. And I also had a comment, I guess. There was a person who spoke a little while ago that made a really interesting point about looking at the minutes for this meeting about what some of the town employees make to get a feel for sort of, what salaries are like for people in a different income bracket. And actually looking at that, what I came away with is worrying whether the AMI limits are too high or too low rather, excuse me. And the reason is that, if I look at some of these numbers and I just multiply them by 2, and again, I'm going to make a reach here that most people here around here are, dual income households, that even these people would not qualify based on the limits as I understand them. And again, I'm not an expert, so I could be wrong about that. But so to me, that would argue for revisiting those, because if it's too high for even these people, then I'm not sure, who we're targeting. Or at a minimum, why it would be fair to exclude, town employees from that. So I'll pause there. Just maybe you could address those. I have one quick follow-up to that.
Sure. I think, well, for me, that's why we kind of wanted to include that missing middle section for exactly what you're talking about. So if you go to the 80%, the 125 for a family of 4, if you have someone that's worked here 10, 15 years, if you have, easier example, but you have a couple that worked here, both here for 10 or 15 years, they will price out of that. I think they're, probably closer to, $150,000, $170,000 combined. But I think a lot of that is captured, with the 100% gets closer to that. So I think that's, I think that's one of the reasons the board, kind of, we definitely have people who say it should be all, capital A affordable, that 80% cap. But, we've kind of said, no, we think that other group that I think is, it has to be pushed to, further, driving an hour to work every day could potentially benefit from that.
Got it. Yeah. I know you guys have probably beat these numbers up a lot. So I'll just reiterate that I, to me, just as a starting point, as I look at these folks, some of whom I, by the way, have spoken to personally, really like the fact that they would actually be priced out, to me seems like, I don't know, somewhere the math is not working, or I'm just not completely understanding then who we are, what group of people we are getting. Maybe it's people like this, but only, at the salary they start with when they're, 22.
The entry level positions definitely would qualify. But once, you kind of get 5 years, I think is the magic step up, right, Larry? Depending on the job, but it's one of the big step ups, so that the first 5 years, maybe they would qualify.
And does that mean, so if you qualify for a unit and then you get a raise, do you have to move? Is that how it works? Would you price out and be forced to move out of a unit that's affordable?
Typically, no.
Okay. And then just the last thing I had a question about real quick is just on taxes. I know, again, something you guys have beat up plenty, which is just, there's a lot of assumptions that are thrown around on these calls and in letters about, impact of taxes. One thing I'm just wondering is all affordable developments, obviously, as someone mentioned, we're not talking about, people on public assistance. Is it by definition that those units require some, tax abatements that essentially function as a tax subsidy? Is that sort of true by definition, or are there some assumptions there that may not apply, or two, you have to see case specific exactly what's being proposed? I don't know if you can answer that.
I think you nailed it. It's the old dreaded "it depends."
Okay.
Depending on the projects, depending on how their funding worked, if they got funding to say pay down the property, if it was privately raised, if it was federal money, I think it depends, which is never a satisfying answer, but it's probably the most accurate. I would say it's fairly common to have, maybe a 10-year pilot or something like that before it goes market rate, which it would still be paying taxes, would just be at a reduced rate, potentially. So, a lot of it depends.
No, that's helpful. I just things that I'm concerned about as well. And again, not my first choice, but trying to figure out what's a good, I do obviously commend you guys for working so hard on this and, trying to find a middle ground. It seems impossible. So thank you.
Thank you, Felix. Arlene?
All right, I think you can hear me now, right?
Yep.
Okay, I just want to reiterate sort of the comment that I made before. I didn't say that everybody who is against a development or affordable development is a racist. What I said was that some of the comments, and I said some of the comments that there was racism in some of those comments. So I'm just gonna address that the person who said that. The other thing is, and I respond in my letter to the board talks about the work that's happening in the schools. And I encourage people to sort of look, if you want to look at my letter and look at the state framework that the work that's being done in the schools is based on, and it's not based on the whim of a few people. But, the misinformation and the throwing around mischaracterizations of what's happening and what people say, specifically with respect to one person, if it's just misinformation that for our community is not a good thing, right? No one's teaching anyone in the schools that all white children are bad, right? I just think that when people say that on calls like this, it's detrimental to us as a community, right? We can have disagreements, but at least we can be truthful. And if we don't understand what's happening in the schools, then maybe we need to spend a little time figuring out what your kids are actually learning, asking some questions and speaking to people. But if you just throw a bunch of, misinformation out there, then, you're really a problem in this community, in my view, and it doesn't help any of us. Again, just to say what I said about the development, I can understand people not wanting, development in front of their yards. Those are I get that. I empathize with that, right? What I don't empathize with is some of the other comments that have, this underlying racism. And so to mischaracterize, when people point that out, to sort of mischaracterize that and have the sweeping statement that, people are calling everyone a race, that's super, it's just divisive and unhelpful to the community, but I'm going to say, Brian, I know that you and the board have worked on even the village policy of hiring, because these these goals are important. Diversifying our workforce is important. Being a welcoming community is important. And, and affordable housing is important as part of that goal. So, I appreciate the work that you guys have done on that. I appreciate the, sort of the openness to that as a project. But, I just want to clear that up. And again, in my letter, there's information if people want to know what's happening in the schools, correct information, not misinformation.
Thanks, Lenny. Exactly 3 minutes.
I'm getting good at this.
I will say this board obviously doesn't have any influence on the schools, other than we allowed the superintendent of school to present his budget at our last meeting. Lisa, again, Lisa again.
Hi there, I'm back. I just want to make 3 points as quickly as I can. One is I agree with what some previous callers have said about the density that you're discussing not being out of character for the neighborhood once you look at some other developments nearby like Woodbrook Gardens. But I also want to speak to something one of the callers said about environmental concerns, because density is good for the environment. And again, I don't think that this is excessive density, but for those who are concerned about the environment, I think we should examine the way that we all live in a very, environmentally unsound way and look at other solutions that density offers. On a point related to the environment, I also want to say, I hope that as a community, we can listen to what Kay O'Keefe said on this call and embrace an ethos of compassion and putting a hand out there to others rather than closing the door behind us. We will be facing catastrophic climate change and challenges as a community here, as a society in the States, and as a species and a race. And we'll have real resource scarcity and other things that we're going to have to deal with. And I hope that we can embrace a more compassionate and thoughtful way of addressing the needs of people who are not ourselves, rather than just closing the door behind us and hoarding what we have. And then, I have written a letter on the last point that I want to make about the importance of talking about race. I also, like Arlene just did, urge folks to read the letter that I submitted to the village board discussing, my feelings, my thoughts on where race fits into this conversation. And since it was brought up again, I'm just going to read a couple of sentences. I know I'm probably close to my limit, saying that implicit bias is real. It is the product of everything we absorb in this society. It is misguided to keep focusing on racism as an individual moral failing, or as something that only applies to someone who is consciously biased against others based on their race or traffics and racial slurs and stereotypes. Implicit bias is a massive barrier to achieving racial equity in this society, even though we are all, by definition, not aware of it. Fear of the other and implicit biases against poor people and people of color play a role in opposition to affordable housing, not just in Irvington, but around the country. My goal in saying so is not to offend anyone or to call them a racist. It's to encourage all of us to examine our assumptions and responses so that we can work toward more equitable outcomes. And then I end this letter by saying, every white American, regardless of how long we have been here or where our ancestors come from, and I'm an immigrant myself, so I certainly was not here at the beginning. All of us are faced with a choice, whether to accept our privilege and the myriad ways in which we benefit from this oppressive system unquestioningly, or to begin to examine it, challenge it, and fight against it. And I think we should be fighting against it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Just under 3 minutes. David Gachow. I keep butchering your name. I'll get it right if you speak a third time.
Hi, Dave Gusho. I was just thinking about some of these things, and whether it's a luxury development or an affordable housing development, I just wanted to express my opinion that if we have concerns about population density, traffic, increased taxes, it's not being racist. I don't really care what color you are, but if you're impacting my pocketbook, then I have an issue. That's all.
Great, thank you. Katerina?
Yes, hello again. So talking about this and about misinformation about school districts. I'm sorry, it's a little bit off topic, but it still belongs to this topic, as all other ideas brought by these activists. So from the horse's mouth, when the consultants come to the school district and say that white children are born racist, that all of us have to undo our whiteness, that white children are raised from infancy to violate black bodies, and so on and so on and so on. To me, that by itself is racist. And as a matter of fact, other school districts here in Westchester, the parents from those school districts are fighting this in Bayou Metro Center, and their representatives who are making these statements and I don't know, violating the minds of our young children, because I think it's extremely divisive, it's insulting, and just completely improper. And one more thing about this, being racist, not willing to have affordable housing in the village. Why would people even assume that other races would want to move here? Not because this village is not inviting, no, not because of that, but because it's a well-known phenomenon that all groups of people, they tend to stick to their own. And once again, not because other groups of people are not welcoming, but simply because it's easier to make friends. It's easier, to joke with one another, to rely on the same experiences. And whether it's based on race or on nationality or any other differences, but people tend to stick to one another, to the same group of people. So I honestly don't even think that other races would be moving into Irvington, but most likely Caucasians, just low income Caucasians, and probably the older people. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Sonal?
Hello, can you hear me?
I can. How are you?
Hi, good. How are you?
Good, thanks.
So thank you. I also want to, note that you guys have been through a lot, and I've only been following this for the last couple of months, so I'm relatively new to it. But I just wanted to make two comments. The first one is that I've lived here for over 10 years, and I'm a first-generation immigrant from India. My husband, who spoke earlier, is a second-generation immigrant. We, like a lot of people who called earlier, who were urging you to reconsider the current rezoning proposal, we moved to Irvington, mainly because of the schools, but certainly because we felt that it was a really warm and welcoming and diverse community as Indian immigrants. And in fact, we sought Irvington over some of the larger, wealthier Westchester towns for what we believe is its socioeconomic diversity. And I know there's a scale when we talk about socioeconomic diversity, but just wanted to share sort of our perspective. And during this call, I think I know I hate to be following the last couple of people that were on, but I think in general, I think it gives me pause when I hear, the concerns of fellow community members who are sort of advocating for the character of the village, the environment, interests of the people that are currently living here. When these concerns are sort of dismissed with words like elitist or selfish, I think that's really harmful. And I think it's counterproductive to sort of creating what it sounds like the people that are for the rezoning are trying to create, which is a sense of sort of community and being welcoming and being inclusive. So I would really sort of caution everyone to know that we're all like living in this community. And so that sort of, labeling is just, it goes both ways. I don't think it's productive. So that said, I am not sort of for the rezoning proposal as it stands. And I hear a community really divided. I see lots of signatures going around, and I just, I urge the board to reconsider voting until we find that there's greater community consensus in one direction or the other. Thanks.
Thank you, and thanks for choosing Irvington.
Sure.
Why don't I look at some of the Q&A, Larry? I think some of these are, I'll just read them for the record maybe. Robert Sable, I agree with two speakers that the zoning proposal may change the character of our village. I think density is important and the number of units allowed should be limited in the proposal. What is the maximum number of units that can be built under this proposal? I think, and we've talked about it quite a bit. Do you happen to know the total number, Mary Ann, off the top of your head? The next one, so can you please answer Peter's question, which I think was the number of how many units do we need in Irvington? I think the mayor misunderstood Peter B. Could you please call him again so he can finish asking his questions? I think he finished. Robert Sable, traffic engineers never seem to predict traffic properly. 55 cars an hour, in my opinion, is a lot. PJ, could you please clarify if the AKRF traffic analysis specifically addressed the impact on Strawberry Lane traffic backup? It sounds like the focus on Broadway only, which is not the only road implicated by the zoning. I think what we have talked about is trying to get traffic to not go all the way up Strawberry Lane if something was developed there. If we could have it exit back out onto Broadway or kind of create some kind of flow where it could go in and out at the bottom. So that would be definitely looked at. Mary Ann?
Yeah, Brian, on the total, and I'm basing this on our request to AKRF to come up with numbers, was the maximum number of new housing units on all the properties could be 155. But not, and that would include like almost 90 senior housing. So if the senior housing were at 90, the others is 67. The other two properties are probably not going to change because they can't.
Can't build anything really. It's built out.
Yeah, they're way over what would be allowed, so they wouldn't change it. But on the two properties, the maximum would be 155, and that's
And
with all the
that's with
bonuses.
senior. Yeah. Otherwise, I think it's 67 and 65. Is that right for the non-senior? Maybe you don't have that there.
It was 67 for. I don't. I'm sorry, Brian. These things have changed so much, but anyway, we wanted to know what the maximum was.
Okay.
Maximum
Yep,
was
that's fine.
155.
Yep, that's with all the senior. Robert Sable, seems like very few people support this proposal out of many concerns. There are very few north, south, and east-west major corridors in this area. It's evident there is a parade or other event. There are a few alternatives. I've noticed that people develop areas until they can no longer tolerate them. Michael Heine, these numbers being presented to property taxes are baloney, but you know that. Thank you for your patience in the face of these disingenuous statements. How many people against the current plan? Why don't you soften the blow of this high density proposal? I think the town should take by some of its property to allow new village offices, new police station, maybe a town pool. Diversity is great, but density is not. Garden preferences are okay, but others are not. There's no racism involved. And I think that's all of them, Larry. Anybody else? PJ.
Hi again. Does the village attorney happen to know off the top of her head what the density is of Woodbrook Gardens per building there? I just asked because a couple of people have actually
Yes.
brought that
In
up. as a-
Woodbrook's Garden, the density is 1,900 square feet. There's 120 units, and divided that into the area of the site, it's a density factor of 1,900.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm a complete novice at this, but what does that work out to, like, per building within that complex?
I don't know how many buildings there are. I know the number of square feet on the site and the number of units. There's
Okay, no,
120 units in Woodbrook's Gardens, which is 140 North Broadway, and 120 North Broadway has 88 units. So in those two buildings, there's 208 units.
Okay, so thank you very much, and I don't mean to put you on the spot. I just bring it up because I think that is maybe the divide that you're hearing between the people who think that multifamily at Woodbrook Gardens levels is okay, and the people who find that the 67 units in one building is not okay. I think it's just like a line that seems to be crossing there, where if you have, say, 6 units per building and a set of garden apartments, that doesn't feel as dense as 67 units in one building. Here's the thing. Okay, I just moved here from Astoria. As you guys might know, Astoria is part of New York City, very, very dense. It's nothing but multifamily housing. This building at 67 units would be the second largest building in Astoria. I lived in New York for 20 years. I moved to Irvington, and I'm as surprised as anyone to find myself about to live across the street from a 67 unit building in Irvington, of all places. In other words, 67 units isn't just big, right? It is monumental. It isn't even multifamily. I mean, technically it is, of course, but in the way that people normally talk about these things, it is a massive apartment building. It is an apartment building so massive that it is actually more like a container for other apartment buildings, all right? This is the kind of building that you would build if you wanted to build housing for other multifamily housing, all right? Do you understand the scale of that? That is not Irvington, and that is fundamentally not in the comprehensive plan either.
Okay. Anybody else? All right, well, we will continue this over to June 7th. Next up, Larry, is authorization to approve change order number 11 for Matheson Park Playground renovation project, 2020-04. Do you want to give us some details on that?
Yeah, pretty straightforward. There were some changes made to pathways towards the top of the hill, the entranceway, just some things that we didn't anticipate, prior to this. So we did direct the contractor to prepare for some additional areas some pathway areas to be widened a little bit. But this was not in the original plan. So that's the change order here.
Just let me click on my my handy dandy bookmark here.
Your bookmarks, yeah.
Yeah. Resolved to approve change order number 11, the amount of $5,875 for installation of extra blacktop, and to authorize the village administrator to execute said change order. I'll make the motion if I can have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next is award of contract for joint paving. This was the one that was put on hold last year, Larry?
Well, we went out a couple of times last year. We ended up getting a contract.
Okay.
So this is now for the upcoming year.
Okay.
As you know, and we've done this now for a number of years, this is the project that is bid out jointly amongst the other Greenberg villages. And we're responsible for paving and milling, which is what this contract is. The other communities will then essentially piggyback on this contract. And it's proven to be a big cost saver and has been over the years.
Okay. Anybody have any questions on this? If not, I will go ahead and read it. Whereas the Village of Irvington, in cooperative relationship with the villages of Ardsley, Dobbs Ferry, Elmsford, Hastings, and Tarrytown, has solicited bids for the milling and resurfacing of various streets in the Village of Irvington and partner municipalities referenced above. And whereas a public notice for this project bid was duly advertised in the official newspaper on April 20, 2021, whereas 11 a.m. on May 6, 2021 at the Irvington Village Hall, all bids received were opened as summarized below, and contractor Montesano Brothers of New Rochelle, total bid of $1,802,068.28. PCI Industries of Mount Vernon, $1,826,963.40. Waters Construction Company of Bridgeport, Connecticut, $1,923,191. Morano Brothers Corporation from Croton-on-Hudson, $1,927,903.10. ELQ Industries, Inc. from New Rochelle, $2,013,254.10. Whereas the village administrator reviewed the bid submitted and determined that the lowest bidder in order is in order in response to the call specifications. And whereas following the unit value bids in the contract and the extended totals based upon engineers' estimates of the work to be performed in the Village of Irvington, the value of work is $194,525, with the balance of the contract value for work apportioned to the Village of Ardsley, Dobbs Ferry, Elmsford, Hastings, and Tarrytown, collectively summing to $1,607,543.28. Whereas in accordance with the contract, each part of municipality will separately authorize the contract, be responsible for the payment of services performed within their respective municipalities directly to the contractor. Now therefore be it resolved that the Village Board of Trustees of the Village of Irvington hereby awards a contract for the work to be performed 2021 milling and resurfacing on various streets in the Village of Irvington. The Montesanto Brothers, Inc., in accordance with their unit prices contained in their bid of May 6, 2021, for the work to be performed within the Village of Irvington, the other 5 villages to authorize the village administrator to execute said contract. I will make a motion if I can have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It would be interesting, Larry, to go back now, and it's probably about 10 years we've been doing it, maybe a little more, and see how much we've saved. I guess it's hard to estimate because I guess we could use our old price that we used or something, but
yeah, no, the savings is real for sure. I mean, these quantities, I mean, obviously Irvington's portion is only 200,000 out of an almost $2 million contract. So
yeah, we obviously didn't bid individually to do a true comparison, but we can probably ballpark it to see what we saved.
Yeah, no, easily.
Reports of board, standing committees and officers, trustee liaison reports. Let's start with Mark, as we usually do.
Nothing at the moment.
Larry?
One sec. From department, summer day camp registration is on. Response for day camp has been great. 120 registered so far. Please contact Maureen with any questions. Registration is online only. Please register your family on the prior registration. The experience. campus for 3-year-olds, 6th graders. Camp will be at the Main Street School from July 12th, August 6th. Or we will reopen senior center to citizens. Only vaccinated seniors will be allowed in the building and on the bus. Please have your vaccination card with you for the first visit. Inventory grant with the DC to conduct a tree inventory in the Irvington Woods Park is underway and will have our first on this Saturday, the 22nd. O'Hara Nation continues to be a location for programming, which includes art, yoga, play, dance, and Legos. Continued classes in the building. Tennis courts are in court. Attendants are on duty Friday nights through Sunday nights. Don't that the school district tennis team and adult recreation department classes are also using the courts. Parks are currently hosting 3 softball leagues, private rentals, Greenberg United Soccer, kickball, and Pee Wee and T-ball baseball. We're excited to say that we have reopened the basketball courts at Scenic Hudson Park. They'll be open daily. Progress continues at Matheson Park. We're still hopeful to be able to open sometime in June. Park users are reminded that launching, landing, or flying a drone over any village park is illegal. Please report drones to the Irvington Police Department. We're still working on a teen summer program. It's hard to find places that will accept groups at this point, but as soon as we have a plan, it'll be announced. Our staff continues to monitor state most information in COVID we're able to offer to community. Things not been too many responses. The postings are for senior citizen bus driver, ranger, and park attendant. Last of all, Hudson Park users are urged to please being allowed in the park. Rules continue and complaints from park users that dogs are in the park are reported continuously. Staff also report that most people ignore them when they ask to leave. Wolseley Pond, Irvington Woods Park are available to dogs on leave. Thank you.
All right. Next up, Connie.
Just a quick report from the theater. They're still doing some virtual events, but they will have an outdoor summer program, June to August. And then after that, they're not sure, about the rules and all, but there'll be some very cool things in the summer from our wonderful theater. That's it.
Janice?
Quickly from the fire department, the radio upgrade is complete, and that's ahead of, in advance of, and in anticipation of the fall switchover by the county. Over 90% of the volunteer firefighters are vaccinated at this point. Upcoming training 6-1 for joint fire attacks and 6-15 hose line stretching. And I will end with what Brian started with and remind everybody that the school budget and school board vote is tomorrow from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. in the Main Street School. And unlike the village board, the school budget is voted on directly by district residents. So please get out there and vote tomorrow. Thank you.
Village administrator's report.
So I have 2 items. One is that the work session, the special work session on Wednesday will be devoted to the, 2 topics. One is the topic of park reservations, specifically Matheson Park. So as you recall, that was one of the open items left to the RPAC and the Parks and Recreation Department to come back to the board with an idea about how park reservations may work. And also there'll be a discussion of the capital budget. Not as exciting, but that's on your plate as well. So that's this coming Wednesday. The agenda will be out tomorrow, but I just wanted to mention that. And the other item is, and I apologize for blowing past this early in the meeting, but there was one item on the consent agenda that needed to be pulled out, and that was the tax warrant. The tax warrant had to be modified, and Brenda can explain a little more about that, but I wanted to have her explain that, and I know you've received a copy of the tax warrant, and hopefully you can kind of re-vote on that particular item.
Okay. Basically, there was legislation presented that would eliminate the ability to put the unpaid water arrears onto the tax levy and to put it onto the property. So as part of the governor's legislation for COVID relief, we had, fortunately, the amount that we had unpaid is historically low for Irvington, actually. It's just in excess of $16,000. In the past, it was about 50,000, 60,000. So it's relatively low, but this year we cannot put it onto the tax bill. So I'd like to withdraw that from the tax warrant, eliminating that. So the modified one reduces the tax warrant by that amount to $15,092,877.24. So the warrant basically gives me the ability as tax collector to issue those tax bills. So on the warrant will be the actual tax levy. Also, some exemptions were removed. I'll explain that very quickly. During the year, there were properties that had exemptions, maybe veterans exemptions and things. Those properties were sold, and those homeowners, the new homeowners, of course, lost the exemption. And we sent them letters with the ability to pay before now. And if you don't, then it gets put on your forthcoming tax bill. And lastly, an unpaid escrow in the amount of $993. We also have the ability for that collection where an escrow in planning board was not paid, and we can put it onto the tax bill.
Okay, so
I just want to comment for a second. I have a problem, voting a reduced warrant. I guess this is the fifth time I go through on budgets. I remember the first time I did, and I saw the number of people that just don't pay their water bills. And I thought it was outrageous. I still think it's outrageous. I understand why the state, in this instance has disallowed, taxing people, due to COVID. I also understand that fifth time, look at this list, the same names are on the list every year. And I just don't understand why people don't pay their tax bills. Their water bills. I paid my water bill one day late because of COVID. I mean, we didn't get it out in time and got 10% tax penalty, which I was happy to pay because I was one day in arrears. And the same people every year, I guess they just ignore the bill. I don't understand. And in the past, I've always thought that's fine. Brenda adds it to the tax bill and they're going to have to pay their taxes. And this year they made away with it. I understand it's only $16,000 this year, but I just have. I think it's outrageous that people just ignore the bills when they come. Sorry, I had a vent.
I wonder if we could look at if there's a way to penalize repeat offenders or something.
Actually, I have to look at the legislation further. It gives the ability to offer a payment program. And part of it almost incentivizes, they have to eliminate penalties, I have to look at that further, but almost incentivizes not paying, and then the village would not be able to collect those penalties. So this new ordinance is relatively new. I haven't looked at it further, but
we could. I wouldn't worry so much about this year because it's COVID and there's, you can't even evict people that haven't paid you rent in 18 months, which, seemed like a good idea at the time, but it seems like sometimes things go on forever. And people that, haven't been impacted at all, it doesn't make any differentiation. But, I think that looking forward, for next year, again, as Larry said, this wasn't a COVID issue. This is literally the same. Like I haven't, I didn't look at the list this year, but I can give you 5 names. And it's typically developers, it seems, that don't pay. I talked to one of them. He said it's because he can write off the property taxes and he can't write off his water bill, which I said, well, you can't really do that because it's actually a penalty. And he said, who's going to know? That's what he told me. So it's, so it's one of those things where maybe we can look at making it, if you do it more than for a certain amount of time, like Larry's one day for 10%, it seems onerous. But if it's the 18th year in a row you haven't paid your water bill, maybe there's something we can look at. Not tonight.
So we need a motion, that's all.
Yeah, a motion to approve the revised tax warrant for 21-22. I'll make the motion if I can have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Brenda, anything else from you?
That's it, thank you.
Mary Ann? Take it as a
You're
no.
muted.
That was a no, I think. Nope. Nope, there was something.
Sorry, no, I don't have anything, but I just have a question. Was Larry Lonkey coming out, his thing distorted to everybody else? Oh, okay, I just wanted to make sure it wasn't my computer. It's your computer, Larry, okay?
Yeah, I apologize. My earbud ran out
No,
of.
no, I'm not, no, I just want to make sure my computer's okay. Okay.
No,
If I got my point across.
Wow.
we got you.
No, we got you. It was
It was just a little slurred. It
herky-jerky, but
was a little slurred, but it's fine. Any public comment? Otherwise, review of action items. I didn't have anything on the top of my head. I will make a motion to adjourn if I can have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Have a good night, everyone. Thanks everyone for attending, and we'll talk to you soon. See you on